Well, good morning, Beaumont. And for reasons I can't seem to figure out, we're still running into massive resistance as we try to solve some of the problems. See, the FBI is a real hotbed of criminals and people that absolutely ignore the fact that Donald John Trump has elected president of the United States, not just by the Electoral College in a landslide, but by the popular vote. So we're not just talking about the Epstein files here. The Department of Injustice is also holding back some other things. They're holding back some of the files that we'd really like to see, for instance, on staffer Seth Rich. According to a Texas-based attorney, Ty Clevenger, the FBI and the DOJ will not be disclosing records in response to his lawsuit made following a Freedom of Information Act request on March that was due by March 10th. And this would be interesting because Seth Rich, as you know, was a Democrat operative, and he's the one that gave the information over to WikiLeaks. Well, since the inception of the Russiagate hysteria that was aimed to pin the DNC leaks and seemingly every other failure of the deep state on the Kremlin, Ty Clevenger has been leading the charge on revealing the truth behind those leaks that irrevocably changed the course of American history due to their impact on the outcome of the 2016 presidential election. His vigilance has focused on uncovering the connection between the DNC leaks and the role they played in the murder of Seth Rich. His death has been spuriously claimed to be the result of a botched robbery, and indeed it was a botched robbery if it was a robbery, because they didn't take any of his money, and his wallet was full of money, and they didn't take his really expensive watch either. And of course, he was later admitted to the hospital with 2 9mm bullet wounds, which the admitting doctor looked at and said these are not life-threatening, and scheduled him for surgery at 10 o'clock the next morning. We don't know who murdered Seth Rich, but according to the ground information that's out there, he was murdered by a gang member of MS-13. And of course, he was paid to do that, the MS-13 guy. And then the MS-13 guy, crazy, you're not going to believe this, he was killed 2 weeks later. Isn't that amazing? We're not sure if he ever got the money, but since he was murdered, the claim that Seth Rich was the source of the DNC leaks has been made by the likes of Kim.com, who was also recently released from jail, Seymour Hersh, and heavily implied by Julian Assange himself. In the years that Ty Clevenger has represented the clients who filed these Freedom of Information Act requests, and they've taken other action against the Department of Injustice and the FBI to release the evidence taken into their custody following Seth Rich's murder, they've been met with delay after delay, which has turned into a Sisyphean task. Sisyphus, as some of you young people might not know, basically he was the guy whose job it was to push the boulder up the hill, and every time he would get close to the top, it would roll away again and he'd have to start over. Anyway, Ty Clevenger first made headway with his mission in September of 2022 when a federal judge ruled the FBI and the DOJ must release the evidence they had on the contents of Seth Rich's laptop within 14 days. Seems to be a lot of laptops involved here. In response to the order, the FBI filed an appeal and requested the records be sealed for 66 years in the interest of national security. In spite of the fact that their request to keep the files from Seth Rich's laptop under seal for that long was denied, refusal to grant the FBI's appeal hasn't expedited the release of the evidence. Despite several successive orders instructing the FBI to hand over these files, the Bureau was able to achieve incremental extensions, keeping the evidence out of the hands of Ty Clevenger. On January the 30th, 2025, Clevenger revealed that the FBI had requested yet another 30-day extension from the February 7th deadline that had been placed on them in August 2024 by federal judge Amos Mazzant, Mazzant. That extension moved the deadline to produce the files to Ty Clevenger to March 10th, 2025, drawing out his efforts to ascertain the evidence now to just over 8 years. The Kafkaesque tale of perpetual extensions granted to the FBI may finally have reached its climax as the FBI has finally informed Clevenger that he will not be getting any records from Seth Rich's laptop after all. While the FBI intends to meet the March 19th deadline, it has informed Ty Clevenger that it will only produce an index giving a brief description of the evidence and an explanation of why they're not going to release it. This means any files, metadata, or other digital evidence will not be disclosed by the FBI or the DOJ. Very, very interesting. Ty Clevenger remains adamant that the refusal to honor the deadline will be overturned by the court. However, any action taken by the court to hold the FBI and DOJ's feet to the fire has proven to be fruitless in light of the infinite delays that it has been able to achieve to circumvent any semblance of transparency. In fact, in spite of this history, Clevenger still remains optimistic, however. He believes that the arrival of Attorney General Pam Bondi and the new FBI Director Kash Patel will be the impetus that finally brings the evidence of what is on his laptop to light. However, that optimism may be better characterized as naivete, because in the weeks that Attorney General Pam Bondi has claimed she has been in possession of the evidence of the criminal network of the notorious pedophile and suspected CIA operative Jeffrey Epstein, her office has done nothing so far to produce any meaningful evidence there. Pam Bondi has constantly moved the goalpost on the release of the Epstein files. She has said they'd be released in a matter of days, originally to placing a deadline on the files she claimed were being withheld by the Southern District of New York Division of the Department of Injustice, and saying the Bureau has completely misled her on the evidence. Pam Bondi's inability to produce any meaningful disclosures about Epstein has led to some pretty sharp criticism as to whether she is capable of leading the Department of Injustice or if she is just another cog in the machine that has kept the scope of Epstein's crimes from being revealed. FBI Director Kash Patel has similarly failed to live up to the hype that he promised. Before being sworn in to lead the Bureau, Patel claimed he would close the headquarters down on the first day of his tenure and make it a museum to the deep state. He did that a couple of years ago. Spoiler alert, the Hoover building is still open. And of course, it's named after J. Edgar Hoover, who was a cross-dressing pervert, and he created the FBI simply to blackmail people that he thought could be a problem for him and maybe prevent him from enjoying his fun. Meanwhile, a whistleblower undermined Patel's tough talk on reining the corrupt officials of the FBI in when it was reported that employees at the Bureau have been steady on deleting the Epstein files, especially the videos that would have been very incriminating. Attorney General Pam Bondi issued a similar claim that the Southern District of New York Division of the Department of Injustice were withholding valuable evidence on Epstein. And although Pam Bondi claimed that any insubordinate officials at either the DOJ or the FBI would be fired for this corruption, well, nobody has been fired as of yet. So after placing a deadline of 8 a.m. on Friday, February 28th on those files, the Southern District of New York decided to furnish the files it was withholding. Bondi indicated that her offices received a truckload of files, slating them for forthcoming evidence that she claims to expose everything about Epstein. Despite indicating that she was able to navigate attempts by the Southern District of New York to subvert the release of this evidence on Epstein, it is unclear whether or not Patel or Bondi have even identified the aforementioned officials they claim were deleting and withholding evidence. Reports have circulated indicating the director of the FBI's New York field office, that will be James Dennehy, abruptly submitted his resignation on Monday. Speculation that it was Dennehy behind the withholding of the files from Bondi's office, and he was thus forced to resign in response. In the event there is validity to that speculation, his forced resignation is a slap on the wrist that pales in comparison to the criminal charges that he or anyone else complicit in that cover-up should be facing. The tone set by Attorney General Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel with how they have handled the disclosure of the Epstein files should leave a sour taste in the mouth of Attorney Ty Clevenger as he continues to fight for the truth about who killed Seth Rich. The debacle surrounding the Epstein files is an ominous portent that indicates Bondi and Patel's public-facing positions are little more than political posturing meant to appease their supporters. Well, I want to thank Zero Hedge and Blue Apples is the person who wrote that, so he's obviously staying incognito. Oh, by the way, on the tariff situation with Canada, Canada charges us 270% on milk. They charge us 245% tariffs on cheese. They charge us 298% tariffs on butter. They charge us 238% tariffs on chicken. This is ridiculous. All of their tariffs, the lowest tariff they have is 25% on cars and steel. Everything else is higher than that. And Donald Trump is only saying, I'm just going to charge you 25%. Now, I happen to be in the audio video business, and I happen to buy speakers that are made in Canada. They're made by a company called Paradigm, and I buy them because they're simply the best speakers that money can buy. And even with the 25% tariff tacked onto it, they're still the best value in a high fidelity speaker, whether it's an in-wall, an in-ceiling, or a box type speaker or a tower type speaker. There are no better speakers currently available under $10,000 than Paradigms. So I'm going to pay that, and I'm happy to pay it, and you'll be happy to pay it too because they're just that good. But the point is, we don't need anything that Canada makes. I can buy other speakers, and there are some American-made speakers that don't sound as good, but I could certainly buy them, and for the average person, they'd be perfectly happy. So, on that note, guys, long live America. Justin Trudeau, on the other hand, well, you're going to have to find someplace else to sell your crap. By the way, let me know what you guys want to hear about. I need comments, so if you're watching this on YouTube or Rumble, I need you to leave a comment. Even if it's just Duck Deuce saying, why is nobody commenting? On the same note, I need you to like it, and I need you to share it to your social media because Freedom 1300 is important to all of us, and it's not going to make a difference unless you like and share. In fact, right now, you should call your friends and say, why aren't you listening to Freedom 1300? And of course, chances are they'll say, I am. Anyway, we need you. See you guys tomorrow. You have a choice, and you chose Freedom 1300.